New Year's is always a good time to do that look back, look forward thing. So I thought that's what we would do this morning, look back and look forward a little bit. And my first slide here is an open-ended chance to think about what's happened in the past year. I thought about getting a big piece of newsprint out and having you all fill it in. There aren't all that many of us here right now, so maybe we wouldn't have a lot to add. But anything stand out for you for the year just passed?
How happy we are.
Oh, that's a lovely thought to have. Yeah.
Being here at Trinity, I think we joined about a little over a year ago.
Being back at Trinity.
Back at Trinity. There you go. Hi, honey.
Morning.
Happy New Year.
Thanks. Same to you.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Whatever. She says that a lot. Same to you, Bob. So, anyhow, we were just wondering.
You have facilitated.
I facilitated. You get to do the hard work. I get to do the facilitation. Yes, ma'am.
I don't want to be a downer.
Debbie Downer.
I'm not so sure I can just have it dated as of a year ago, but I feel a heaviness over the loss of so many people.
Yeah.
It's been a hard year for a lot of people, and you know, that's just a reminder of how precious and vulnerable life is, and to fully engage in it while we have the opportunity.
Yeah,
so.
That's a fair point. It's a fair point. I was going to go here next anyhow. This is a Peanuts cartoon from when was that? Oh, December 26th, day after Christmas. Did you have a good Christmas? What do you mean by good? Do you mean did I get a lot of presents, or do you mean did I give a lot of presents? Are you referring to the weather or the Christmas dinner we had? Do you mean was my Christmas good in a spiritual sense? Do you mean was my Christmas good in that I saw new meaning in old things? Or do you mean... And Charlie Brown just sighs. But I just thought that was actually a fairly lovely little comment. But why I went with that immediately on the heels of your comment, as I think about Christmas, I met a lot of folks at the door, two in particular I can think of, for whom I knew this Christmas actually... Yeah, no, two at least on Christmas Eve that I can think of, for whom this Christmas was hard. I think of Wendy, whose mom died in 2015. And so this was her first Christmas without her mom. And I think of Peter Bull, whose mother Marty died this past fall. So for those reasons, at least, Christmas, it may be good, but good is such an unhelpful word to describe that experience, isn't it? So.
But don't you feel or think maybe that they feel that sense of community wrapping around them?
Oh, I think so, absolutely.
More so.
Yeah. So I don't think there was any real sense that I mean, in the case of those two in particular, that there was any place else in the world they needed to be or wanted to be, but where they were on Christmas Eve. And yet they arrived with some, real profound sense of the sorrow. I mean, it was tender in that way. Yeah.
Well, in the sense of community, for me, has a tendency to accentuate the sadness of the loss, because the more you care about people, the deeper you feel when they're no longer there. I mean, so it's a two-sided coin. We've had losses, you always have losses, but if you don't know the people, you haven't engaged with them, somehow it doesn't touch you in the same way that if you have. And so I do think that that's part of the reason why I'm feeling that in a deeper way, because the community sense is so much deeper.
There's a lovely, I sometimes reprint it on bulletins for funerals and such. There's a lovely note in the prayer book at the end of the burial office in the prayer book. And it talks about, the nature of the service. The nature of the service, talking about funeral, is joy, celebration, resurrection. And then it adds, and this is the part that makes it worth reprinting, and yet the joy doesn't make grief go away.
No.
The very love which God has given us in life is why we grieve at a time of parting. That's not the way they phrase it really quite well. It's a lovely, lovely bit of phrasing. So maybe we'll come back and circle around to that later sometime. Yeah.
I'm so intrigued by what you're saying, Peggy. I think what I heard you say was because of the depth of community, the pain is more apparent.
I think, for
For
me
you.
anyway,
Mhm.
that's how.
So it's almost like the community makes a container for deep feeling.
So,
that
you
maybe-
know, but because you notice there's a hole in that space that they held in community when they're gone, you know, and I maybe I'm just being modeled and I don't know.
No.
Not at all.
You
No,
touched
no, no,
something
no,
really
no.
profound. Wow.
Because there's an additional thing that what you're saying brings up for me, and that's the fact that in a really healthy community, everybody with their own gifts has a place.
Yeah.
And so we're not manila white. We're not all the same. We have unique things that we bring, and so that's why we feel that loss of that person, because their uniqueness was appreciated here, and what they brought to the table was appreciated here, and when they're not here anymore, we realize that is gone.
And the closer the community, the more evident their uniqueness becomes.
Well, and then we
Yeah.
allow that uniqueness. We are not a place that everybody has to be the same.
But
That's-
we know they're all right because they're with God.
Oh, yeah.
On the other hand, when they're here, we know they're all right because we have this appreciation of this vast diversity of what you can be, and that there's an okayness for that huge. Our container is very big in that we welcome people of all ilks and a wide range of diversity.
You can be both a duck and a beaver.
That's right.
But I
Let's
wouldn't,
not push it.
Not this morning.
but I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but here, because the other members or friends or communities don't have the depth of understanding of my loss or my grief. So I'm trying to figure out, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
Oh, okay,
Not
good.
at all.
No.
Yeah.
I don't mean to say it's a bad thing.
Oh, I'm not sure I was taking it as bad. I'm just putting myself saying this is where I'd want to be.
Well,
In my
I
sorrow,
personally
because
have
everybody
never
understands
known
it.
anywhere else like this.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
when I meet people, and I've always looked at it this way, that when you get to know people and you associate as we do, a little piece of you becomes there. And so when that loss means more to you when they're gone, you're the little piece of you just left. And I'm not sure that's how everybody would see it, but that's kind of how I've always related. Good friends, when they leave, they're one part of me, because I gave my feelings to him.
So the flip side of that, though, is that they're still living
Oh yeah,
in you,
Yeah.
which is a
that's you got
kind
to
of a
carry
grabby
that.
thing too. Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Which
last
is
night.
probably what the whole eternal life, part of what eternal life is the fact that we live in one another, and that whole attitude is very life-giving.
Well, do you find yourself picking up feelings or adjustments in your thinking and things of that sort when you have friends? You tend to start thinking more, bigger, open mind, because you learn more from friends and other people, such as where I'm at now. I'm learning a lot. And if it wasn't for you folks, I wouldn't be learning.
Oh, it's so easy to be holier than thou. You don't have to interact with anybody else, isn't it?
But I'm really
I'm trying, Mike. I got a
touched
new word
by
for
what
this year.
Peggy said, and I
Holier than
know
thou.
for us, there's been so many friends back east too. Really heartbreaking, and I've thought, the more people you get to know and love, you're so much more vulnerable. And that can get hard to
But the
cope
flip
with.
side of that is if you don't,
Yeah.
you miss
Right,
out on all of the
right,
good
right.
stuff. Yeah.
So,
I
well,
mean, we
the
have-
option is to be cold-hearted, isn't it?
We have
We're
5
hard-hearted,
children.
I mean.
We have 9 grandchildren. I think right now about 4 or 5 of our grandchildren are having hard things in their life one way or another. And it's like, oh. So it can be, as I say, you can start to feel very vulnerable also.
Sure, sure.
Well, we are vulnerable.
We are, but
Yeah.
the more you know, the more vulnerable you are.
That's right. That's right. So, sometimes life doesn't allow us to pretend otherwise.
So did we deviate from your PowerPoint?
Well, this is okay. It's okay. It's a chance just to look back. I
No, it's
did have a
wonderful.
couple of particular topics I wanted to remind us of in case we've forgotten, because a lot's been happening. Did mention this briefly as an aside in my sermon early this morning. I'll probably mention it again at the next sermon, but who knows? But in case I don't, look back. We had the bazaar. Couldn't have happened without everybody pulling together and making it so. So that was a couple of pictures I took from our bazaar this year. The Saturday before Thanksgiving, as I recall. That's right.
Yep.
Yes.
And then there was Advent. I didn't know it would change on my PowerPoint.
How about that?
Wow, isn't that
I
fun?
kept waiting for it to come around to English because I didn't read some of those lines.
It starts out
Just some of them? If I couldn't find the date fast enough, it would switch.
So, in case you don't know what this refers to, the Advent word, which I know some of us signed up and received the daily emails, was just a little brief reflection on a word for each day. Sometimes the word seemed really appropriate to where I was. That was my experience. I'm guessing some of you had the same experience. And then some of us took pictures that corresponded to any of the given words and posted those on social media with the hashtag Advent word and then maybe the hashtag wonder. I didn't do it as religiously this year as I did last year. Last year I found an occasion to do it every single day of Advent. This year I was distracted and I didn't. I know, and I just didn't do it. And once I got off the track, I found I was erratic. But it was still a slight engagement. Anyway. So,
Are we the only ones where it's still coming every day?
no, they did this last year too, and it kind of annoyed me because I was signing up for Advent work, and so I think sometime about this time of year,
Guilty because we're not.
sometime
reading.
about this
Yeah.
time of year last year, I said, "Stop sending me your emails." So the Cowley Founders, that's the sort of the nickname we give that particular religious order, the Society of St. John the Evangelist. The Cowleys, they're just overzealous.
But they come up with some interesting.
They do, and you can sign up and get sermons. You can get all sorts of things if you want. So anyhow, but that was Advent. And then they had the St. Nicholas dinner.
Oh, that was no fun.
So the Advent police in me says, "Don't sing Christmas carols," and the other part of me says, "Wasn't that fun to sing Christmas carols?" So, and St. Nicholas himself.
With their baby doll. Isn't that sweet?
And we've had snow, which reminds me to say thank you to the Tom and the others. I know, Tom, you're out there occasionally shoveling. I don't know who else.
Jim?
Jim, that's right.
Jerry was out there this morning. Jerry Lee.
Sure were a couple of guys out there this morning. When I got here this morning, there wasn't any snow on the ground.
It all happened in
Really?
Yeah. So I got just a dusting on my windshield. I swept it off and drove on in, and by the time folks started arriving at 7:15 or so, they needed a shovel. So, but thanks to all that. Church is beautiful with the snow. And then, of course, we had the greening of things and the mess the kids made.
That made it even more special.
It did.
I just thought that that whole manger thing was so beautiful. Yeah, so,
That was a really innovative thing. I really enjoyed that.
whoever's, I guess it was Helen's idea.
Well, Helen remembered it from when, I was going to say we, but I wasn't here then, but when Trinity was worshiping at St. Francis.
Well,
That's where she saw the idea of opening up the altar to make a creche. And so she had that seed planted, and then she brought it to us, to our attention, and asked if we might consider doing that here. It took a fair amount of work and coordination.
Did any of the figurines have to be modified to fit under?
No, she specifically ordered them so that they would fit under. That said, they're a little bit large. So much. Carol Moore came in this morning. The scene on top of the piano. She pointed to the nativity scene we have over there, and she says she remembers. I think she said here at Trinity when the pieces we had for our nativity set here were smaller than those.
Yep.
And they sat in a little corner, and you couldn't see them at all. And so she was talking about how lovely and how wonderful it is to be able to see the figures.
Well, and they were so delicate too that they were up high and the children didn't have any contact with them. So it's nice that.
These are a little delicate. It made me a little more than a little nervous about having them processed. I imagined we would have all of them carried in, but there was no way after I saw how fragile some of two of the pieces, the donkey and the ox, arrived broken. And they replaced one of them, and the other one is actually still going to come, but we could patch it together, so it was okay. But you know, even if we could patch it together, Helen wasn't going to simply accept it. So no, it's broken, and they said, well, we'll send you a replacement. And they sent one before Christmas, and the other one is still coming in.
They ran out of them.
They ran out. So. But yeah, the horns of the ox, I just had, imaginations of kids bringing them up, and it would just take not much of it all to knock against the side of the pew, and the horn's gone, or the head falls off, or worse. It's kind of hard to imagine worse than the head falling off. So, but they carried a few in, which was sweet. And then Christmas Eve. Someone dear to me posted a picture of what they were doing at 7:30 on Christmas Eve in her pajamas before the fireplace. And I posted this. This is me at 7:30 on Christmas Eve, following the procession into the church. But it was delightful. It was gorgeous. There's the choir between services. Thank you, Arlene, and others from the vestry in particular who put together a little bit of something for choir members between services. And then, of course, Christmas Eve. I have the best view when we do the candlelight singing of Silent Night. I look out and see the lights. And then Advent. How many of you did your Advent calendars? Do you know when you're supposed to bring them back for show and tell?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. And Julie will do the judging.
Oh, okay.
Oh, really?
Thanks.
Is there a prize?
Yeah.
I'll
No,
have a
there's no
prize.
prize.
Oh, I think I'll have
Well,
one.
you get points.
Points. Oh, I
You get
love
points. Points are worthless, but you get points.
Stars on your crown.
All right, so that's Christmas. What do you mean by good? What do you mean by good? And then we have 2016, looking ahead. This was, I talked about peanuts earlier. That was December 26th I showed you. This was the top for December 27th. Just by happenstance, I got 2 peanuts worth doing. And this is Lucy offering as a public service a list of resolutions for Linus. She thinks it's really, really helpful. Clearly, he's not so convinced. You agree with that? All right. All right, this is just to put it all in perspective. This is a series of resolutions somebody created. 2012, I will get my weight down below 180. 2013, I will follow my new diet religiously until I get below 2014, I will develop a realistic attitude about my weight. 2015, I will work out 3 days a week. 2016, I will try to drive past the gym. That's the value of typical resolutions, isn't it now? So 2016, looking ahead. We can be open-ended here again. Since it went far afield before, why not see where it takes us this time? What are you looking forward to in 2016?
Well, me for developing more families coming in, more welcoming.
I think more involvement.
I hear Tom's going to be the new chair of the Building and Grounds Committee.
Yay.
She did that.
Careful what you ask for, Tom.
I didn't ask. Well, I'm going to need a lot of help. We've got some good people.
So you get to write an article for the Trumpet right away.
Not the January
It's gonna
issue.
be short.
That one is already.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
The February issue deadline is the 15th of January.
Oh, look at him. He's not officially on, but he's already got an
Still take
article.
Christmas trees out at home.
All right. Well, I thought there were at least 3 different ways of looking at the year ahead, or looking ahead here in January 2016. Look at the year, the coming seasons, and the annual meeting. We talked a little bit about the year, but I do invite your interest about possible forum topics going forward. I do know that I want to spend a little time in the next couple of weeks somehow doing some prep for the annual meeting. I do know that we have scheduled a topic for January 17th. Again, another kind of open-ended, let's talk and listen to one another. Joan will be facilitating that. In Lent, we haven't crafted it very carefully, but we intend to do a 5-week Sunday morning series, which I might call Preparing for Death Before You Die. And then I'm just curious as to whether there's other topics you want to see. That carries us through really till Easter, almost. But I'm not entirely clear what we're doing in January or the first week in February. So there's some give and take there a little bit.
So will there be a book club or book series? And will that be in conjunction with the Lenten theme?
I expect so, and I was planning on inviting some conversations specifically about that in just a moment.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's
I'm
thank
early.
you for asking.
It's under others.
Oh,
No, actually, this conversation is what we want to do during this time frame, particularly here. Yes, ma'am.
C.S. Lewis said, "Die before you die, because there is no time after."
So
Yeah.
you remind me of that when we get closer, will you? Okay. Maybe for the newsletter article that we're going to put together for the February issue of the newsletter, which deadline is January 15th.
Oh.
If you could remind me of that, that would be really helpful. Anything else you want to see happen with this time
oh,
frame?
adult ed, okay.
This time frame.
Another series with Mary Ann.
Yeah.
We'll get Mary Ann back. We'll get her back.
Well, I wonder if Jeff has anything in particular that he'd want to.
Jeff Bullock?
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing he will. And in fact, I want to have a sit down with the associate clergy. We have 4 on our list, and I want to sit down with them. I was going to do it if I got elected. Still going to do it that I'm not elected to still see what they can do, what they can offer, what they're interested in doing. So Jeff and John, I know he wants to do more than he's been able to do so far, and Celine and Marianne. Gay's going to be taking off for a couple months, so we don't have her to look to for a little while. But when you get back, we'll give you some work to do too.
What's Michael Curry? How's he doing?
Oh, you heard he was in the hospital. He's doing fine as far as I know. The surgery was delayed a day or two because he'd been taking aspirin. They gave us press releases on all of this, so the surgery was delayed a day or two. It happened. His release was delayed a day or two again because the surgery was, so everything was just pushed back a little bit. But he seems to be doing fine. While he was still in the hospital, he was obliged. This is actually perhaps longer standing, a larger concern. He was obliged to issue a statement that 3 members, executive level kinds of folks in the Episcopal Church offices were being put on leave, and he called for an independent investigation, and it has to do with questions raised about management of monies. Now that's just ugly, and that's a source of concern that would weigh on anybody. So. That's not a good way to start your tenure as presiding bishop. Not the first time such things have happened, now his letter did caution us: don't jump to conclusions. You're put on leave. We have an independent inquiry to establish what's really true. Just because something gets said doesn't mean it's true. But our prayers for all concerned, of course, would be helpful for him in particular. Yes, ma'am.
This just crossed my mind. I'm wondering about morning or two about the ordination process. There may be people, hopefully there are people in this congregation that might be experiencing a call to be a deacon or a priest. So it would be useful to talk about that.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I always appreciate things like what Mary Ann did, but I think we need more and more what you might term as educational or to help people know more about their faith, because people will come out on Sunday morning for this that won't go to EFM in classes, that sort of thing, because you can get it in little chunks. But I do think it's the responsibility of the church to provide what people need to grow in their faith and their understanding.
Is Nettie going to make another visit here before she's?
No.
Not anything like a formal visitation. I have had an inquiry from Pat Bell asking when he could make a visitation. He wanted to put Trinity high on the list, which was, politic of him. I mean, I don't mean that in a bad sense.
No.
And so he actually, the Wednesday after the election, I think it was in Bend and took Barbara and me out to dinner.
He came to Bend on his way from the Dalles to Cove.
Yeah.
Just saying.
It's on the way.
Straight line.
We're going to need to help that boy understand the geography. He knows exactly what he was getting into.
So could he be one?
But he asked when he could come early in his time, and I suggested. There were other days that would have been just fine, but I suggested that our feast day is Trinity, Feast of the Trinity. So I suggested a Trinity Sunday, and that's what he took note of. Now, what actually will happen, I don't know. It's a little premature for that. He may actually find that he has someplace else he's supposed to be.
And when is that?
Trinity Sunday is, I think, May 23rd is the date that pops in my head.
May.
It's before Memorial Day that year,
22nd.
this year, 22nd.
That's when Rusty used to come.
My birthday.
Did he?
He couldn't come before?
He
Enjoy
could.
the
He
winter travel?
Well, he doesn't get installed or whatever
His
until,
consecration is April 16th.
yeah.
Yeah, but he's still
Drop by.
the elect, yeah.
And he might well drop by.
The way he made it the first time, he could be here any day.
That's right.
Driving.
So, given his sense of geography, he might just pop by.
Oh, I thought I was in Pendleton.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So he'll be around. So, April 16th, the consecration. We don't know where yet. The standing committee and the transition committee have had some conversations. I'm back on the standing committee, by the way. I've actually had a meeting. I'm now the secretary of standing committee, which means I got to take minutes. Judy was my inspiration. I used your vestry minutes as a template to start my standing committee minutes, and they look prettier than they used to look. So anyhow, the probability is that the consecration will be somewhere around Bend, Sun River, Redmond, this area. There are 2 churches are being preliminary. It's very preliminary, and nobody knows if this is really going to work. But the 2 churches we've talked to, and by we I mean other people who does other jobs, but First Presbyterian and Unitarian Church. So no idea if either one of those is going to work, or if something else is going to be more appealing in the end, but that's at least some of the possibilities that are being looked at. So we'll see. Probably find out fairly soon, I'm guessing, where that's going to be.
Can you use a Catholic church?
Could.
St. Edward's is nice.
You should see the Unitarian Church.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
So anyhow, if you want to offer some feedback, you can get a hold of Roy Green. He's on the transition committee. He's the one actually, I think, making initial contacts on these. So if you have input, give it. I'll pass it on, or you can talk to Roy yourself if you don't. Looking ahead, Epiphany Potluck this coming Wednesday.
Oh, I like genies.
Some scenes from last year. Our stars are still on our refrigerator. I don't know where your stars are from last year. I'm looking forward to seeing what I get. So Tuesday, not far behind, February 9th, all of a sudden. And then Ash Wednesday, February 10th. And Joan, the Lenten book group. This is what we did last year on Thursdays in Lent. These are the dates that I've already sort of identified, assuming we stay with Thursdays in Lent, which seems to me to work pretty well. It lets choir members at least consider going. It's a lot to ask them to come out every Wednesday and every Thursday too, but on the other hand, I'd rather include them than not. So Thursdays are that time, and then Palm Sunday, March 20th. I don't think I put it in there, but you can guess when Easter Sunday is, right? Yeah. So, just a cloud of books. I haven't picked a book yet. If you want to be a part of helping me think about what kind of book or whatever to pick, there you have it. I actually have 2 autographed copies of Diana Butler Bass's Grounded. Barb and I picked one up in Portland, and then Nettie gave it to all the clergy of the diocese this year for a Christmas gift. And she was very proud of herself, Nettie was, when she gave it to me. She says, "Now this one is signed." I said, and I thought, I said to myself, I didn't say anything to Nettie. "Thank you, Nettie," I said. But I said to myself, yeah, mine is signed. And it was actually signed by Diana, who was standing there right in front of me. And she signed it to me and Barb personally, instead of just generically. But anyhow. Gift horse in the mouth and all that. No, I have 2 copies of that. So that's a possibility if folks are interested. Joan Chittister writes some really wonderful stuff, and this is a relatively new one. I'm a little mixed on her. She has to be interpreted. She's always writing from her own experience, which is very Roman Catholic, but it's also very, very deep and profound. So that's a couple possibilities I thought of, and then I just threw up a whole bunch of other books that are on a to read someday list of mine. So one way I get to read a book is to actually read it with other people. So any thoughts?
Well, the nice thing about groundedness is that it really interfaces with the Kim's movement and the environment, and brings in all of that kind of thing, as well as the spiritual aspects of finding God in everything. I like grounding a lot. And Diana Butler Bass is a pretty clear writer.
It's a different book than most of what she's written.
Have you all read it? Have you all read it?
I haven't yet. Bart kind of took hold of it early on and has it on her bedside. And I threatened to move it off her bedside, and then I was given one, so I don't have to move it off her bedside table.
I read the first third of it.
And,
I love
and
it.
is it keeping, yeah.
I just think it's
I
profound,
love hers
so I
and
needed to slow down. I'm hearing a groundswell for him.
I was gonna say, just going on your word,
That's a good bet. That's a good bet. Most of what she's written, and this is I heard her in an interview describe the difference. Most of what she's written has been very much an academic book. She's a scholar, a sociologist, an academic studying the history of religion, especially in the United States. And so she's analyzing what's going on with the church in that way. And this is more of a memoir, as I understand it, where she reflects, kind of drawing on everything she's already studied. She's saying, this is how I live it out in my life and how I see things playing out in the life today. But not so much from an academic perspective in that same sense, not so much sociological and all the rest she says, but more putting herself into the story.
Well, yeah, it's not memoir. I wouldn't call it that. If she used that word, then that's different.
I don't know that she quite used that word, but she was talking about it in terms of how she sees herself.
Right. Well, she does. She shares personal experiences and reflections much more than any.
Yeah. So
Could we get her to come here?
maybe.
Like 3 years.
She and Marianne are good friends.
Yeah,
and,
she visits.
I know First Pres has actually talked to her about doing a program over there.
Well, at convention, I overheard a conversation in regard to her, where one lady was very upset because she had contacted her and she thought they had it all settled, but she was coming, and then when she contacted her again, Diana said, well, I won't go for that small amount of money. So she was very upset about the fact that Diana wanted much more money. Basically, she said she found a place to go at the same time that she could get more money for.
I'm thinking more that she spends a weekend with Marianne and just happens to come to church during adult ed.
That would be our best bet.
That's perfect.
Because I know what her going rate was a few years ago.
Yeah,
She did a
no.
clergy conference in Diocese of Oregon several years ago, and it's more than what we want to afford. And this is her livelihood. She has an agent who manages all this sort of stuff.
She has no other job right now.
Yeah,
Yes.
so-
So
Yeah.
and that's reasonable to understand that, and if you give away what gives you your life, you're not going to have people wanting to pay for it after a while.
Yes, there we go. That's the internet for us. Okay. Anyhow, so that's a good possibility. And then the annual meeting coming up, January 31st, in case you missed that memo. It is a week before the Super Bowl. So it's no conflict there. Just saying. After the 10:15 service, I presume we're having it here in Brooks Hall. We haven't talked about logistics. Probably we're going to provide, sandwiches or something. So we'll give you something to eat, and we'll hope you'll stay and be a part of that. It's there's what we do, routine business, the 2015 financial report, the 2016 budget, elect new vestry members. We'll have other reports. I don't know what the deadline is on that. I asked Jan to figure that out for us pretty quickly. If you're going to get a written report in, tomorrow would be better than the 15th. So get those in as soon as you can. And special reports and announcements always as appropriate. I know we'll have some conversation about our alcohol policy, which is under review. There are some interesting things for us all to hear about that. The reason for having this review happen at this point is that at our diocesan convention, our diocesan guidelines changed. And they changed in part because of what happened at our general convention, where things changed. And they changed in part because about a year ago, one of the big news stories was Heather Cook a bishop, an assisting bishop in the Diocese of Maryland, I think, was arrested, having been involved in a traffic accident in which she had been drinking and texting and ended up killing a man. And she is in jail now. She is no longer recognized as a bishop. And the man's life and his family's life, of course, have been just utterly devastated. So, it's just a horrible story for everybody involved. And that's invited us to reflect on that. Meanwhile, we've learned some things about deeds and restrictions and all the rest that apparently we didn't know a year ago. Urban legends aren't always true, it turns out. So stay tuned for that. We'll have an update on some of the building projects that have been taken on in the last year. A year ago, we were just getting used to being back here again. And there's been a lot of work done since then, and still some yet to be done. And anything else? I don't know. Probably. That's what I know right now.
Father Jed, can you speak to the vestry nominations? Are you still looking for vestry nominations, or do you have a reasonable slate?
The nominating committee has been working. Excuse me. My recollection, I haven't, or no more emails have come in the last couple of days, and I haven't been in the office. My recollection is that we're in a position with 5 identified nominees. Is my recollection. I'm not sure of that. So 5 nominees for 3 positions, and I want to have a sit down with those nominees. I want them to make sure. I want to make sure they understand before anything gets said out loud that if there are 5 people going up for the position, we're going to have an election, and 2 of them are going to lose. And before we elect, I want them to understand that so that they don't find out on January 31st that they didn't get elected and they got beat. I just went through one of those. It's not so bad not being bishop, as we said. It's horrible to lose. And before you do that in public, it's just nice to make sure they know that. And also, since we have maybe 5 people, just to be able to have a little conversation about what the responsibilities are, make sure that they're entering that clear-eyed. But I think we're in good shape. I don't have any concerns about finding enough people. I think we'll have some good leadership going into next year. So.
But don't you think the 5 people would realize that there's going to be 2, and I could be one of them?
I think they probably do, but I'm not certain. And rather than assume, I remember what that word means. Rather than assume, I just want to make sure it gets said out loud.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else?
That's the state before creativity.
That's not a question happening here. That's in another room. Okay. Okay. 2016. Here we come.
Whoa. The bell's on.
Bells on.